Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I hope you have all had a restful summer with family and friends. I know that my colleagues and I are excited to get started on a very busy fall session. We have a lot planned, and today we're diving right back into it. As you all know, the federal government put forward legislation in the spring to legalize and regulate recreational use of cannabis in Canada. The Federal Cannabis Act proposes rules and restrictions around production, sale, possession, and consumption of cannabis that will apply across the country. But it also leaves the provinces and territories with some big decisions to make. If passed, the federal bill will set into motion a once-in-a-generation change for our society, the end of prohibition. Legalization of cannabis is a broad and complex topic that we know is accompanied by some concerns for Ontario families. Such a considerable change has rightly led to some anxieties about the impact of legalization on our communities, our roads, and our children's health. The people of Ontario rightfully expect their government to approach legalization thoughtfully and responsibly, which is why we have set out 4 key priorities for Ontario's approach to the federal plan. Our aim from the start has been to protect youth, promote health and road safety, focus on prevention and harm reduction, and eliminate the illegal market. Even though the federal bill was only introduced a few months ago, our government has been working on these priorities for over a year now. Guided by a dedicated legalization of cannabis secretariat, we have been working closely with our federal and provincial counterparts, consulting with public health experts, law enforcement, community agencies, and municipalities from across the province, and learning from the lessons of the 8 U.S. states who have already legalized. By bringing these different perspectives together, we have developed a plan to ensure a safe and sensible framework as the federal government moves to legalize. Every decision that we are announcing today, and every one that we still have to make, was guided by those 2 key principles. And with that in mind, in order to be ready for next July, our government will bring forward legislation this fall to ensure that even after legalization, cannabis remains a carefully controlled substance in Ontario. The key points of our approach fall into 2 broad categories. Lawful use, that's the who, what, and where can cannabis be used, and retail, the how and where cannabis could be sold. Let's start with the who. We will be proposing that 19 be the minimum age for anyone to buy, consume, or have cannabis in Ontario. Like everything my colleagues and I will be speaking to today, this meets both our guiding principles. Raising the minimum age above the federal minimum will help keep youth safe. To further protect youth, the prohibition of those under 19 having cannabis will also allow police to confiscate small amounts of cannabis from young people without leaving them with a criminal record. And aligning the age for cannabis with the current minimum age to purchase alcohol or tobacco is the sensible thing to do. And importantly, it also strikes the right balance so it is not so high that young people might be driven to the illicit market. We know that a critical part of eliminating that illegal market is developing a safe and sensible approach to retail. To help ensure careful control and social responsibility, our model will ensure that alcohol and cannabis will not be sold in the same store. My colleague, Minister Souza, will tell you more about this in just a moment. As we build up a safe, responsible channel for recreational cannabis, our twin goal will be stopping the sale of illegal, unregulated, and unsafe cannabis. Illicit cannabis dispensaries are not legal now and will not be legal retailers under the new model. Let me be clear. These pot dispensaries are illegal and will be shut down. If you operate one of these facilities, consider yourself on notice. To help shut down these illegal operations, we will be pursuing a coordinated and proactive enforcement strategy with municipalities, local police services, and the OPP. We will be convening an enforcement summit with policing partners, public health officials, and other stakeholders to identify any gaps, opportunities for coordination, and resource needs to keep Ontario communities safe. Keeping Ontario's roads safe is another critical part of our plan. And we are currently developing tough new measures to address drug-impaired driving. You will be hearing more from Minister Del Duca in the coming weeks on the steps his ministry will be taking in that regards. Now that you know the who and the how, let's move to the where. As I mentioned earlier, we recognize that there are some very real risks to when it comes to the use of cannabis. We know that cannabis can impact the brain development of young people and has the potential to lead to substance abuse. I want to reassure the people of Ontario that our government's approach to cannabis is focused on protecting our youth and helping to prevent exposure to secondhand cannabis smoke. We have a responsibility to ensure that our young people have every opportunity to realize their full potential. A responsibility to do what we can to protect and educate our youth about the dangers of substance abuse. A responsibility to ensure that all Ontarians are protected from the dangers of second-hand smoke, and that includes from cannabis. These are responsibilities our government takes very seriously. We are aligning restrictions on cannabis with alcohol and tobacco. Specifically, we are proposing to restrict consumption of recreational cannabis in all public places and workplaces. Simply put, the use of recreational cannabis will only be legal in private residences. It is the common sense thing to do. And while we may explore the possibility of allowing licensed establishments for the consumption of cannabis in the future, in consultation with municipalities and experts, it would not be sensible to move forward with that today. Even as we work to limit youth access and public use of cannabis, it is important to acknowledge that these efforts won't be successful 100% of the time. In Canada, the rate of cannabis use among young people is among the highest in the world. That's why Ontario is currently developing an integrated prevention and harm reduction strategy to support youth and vulnerable populations. As part of that strategy, our government is endorsing Canada's lower-risk cannabis use guidelines. We're going to work with all of our partners to raise awareness of those guidelines and to encourage people to follow them and use recreational cannabis responsibly. We also recognize that there may be a need for adding training and other supports for educators, healthcare staff, and those who are providing social services out in the community. So for those doing that important work, I want to be very clear. Ontario will work with you to explore ways to provide you with the support you need. We know that a key part of prevention is information. That's why it's important that we equip people with the information they need to make informed choices about cannabis use. We will undertake a broad public information campaign to ensure that the public is aware of cannabis-related health risks and the new rules Ontario will be putting in place. Public information will be an important factor in getting this transition right. So in addition to our awareness campaign, we will be supporting the federal government's National Public Awareness Campaign to promote prevention and harm reduction. What you have heard today is just the beginning. Ontario is at the start of a long process. We're committed to getting this transition right, making the tough decisions that are needed now, and consulting more on those decisions yet to come. Our government understands the magnitude and importance of the task at hand, and we understand that Ontarians expect their government to approach it thoughtfully and responsibly. I believe the decisions we are announcing today will help demonstrate our commitment to a safe and sensible approach to cannabis legalization. Now I will invite Minister Sousa to come forward and to the microphone and tell you a bit more about our proposed retail model. Charles?
Good morning, bonjour. Thank you all for coming today. Merci d'être ici aujourd'hui. And I thank my colleague, Minister Naqvi, for his tremendous leadership he's shown on this file as we prepare for the federal legalization of cannabis next July. Minister Hoskins and other Cabinet colleagues' contributions were also invaluable in ensuring a safe and sensible transition over the next 10 months. As you know, the federal government has set a deadline for July 2018 for provinces to establish their own systems for direct sales to citizens. In light of this timing, Ontario plans to be ready with our provincial retail distribution system next summer to meet that deadline. The Ministry of Finance has been working diligently on the retail model for some time. Cannabis will remain a carefully controlled substance in Ontario, subject to strict rules when it comes to both lawful use and retail distribution. We believe we have the experience and expertise to design and implement a safe and sensible retail distribution system, one in the public's best interests, a system that ensures public health and safety, protects youth and vulnerable people, and prioritizes prevention and harm reduction. With those principles in mind, we decided to move forward with an LCBO-run model. This approach aligns with how we retail alcohol and would achieve the control and social responsibility standards that the people of Ontario expect and deserve. The experience in other jurisdictions, such as in the U.S., has shown us that it is better to start with strong controls and evaluate the system over time. Therefore, the LCBO will establish separate and dedicated standalone cannabis retail stores as well as online sales. Our proposed approach would leverage the LCBO's experience and operational capabilities. The federal framework dictates the sale of cannabis must be behind the counter and cannot be alongside alcohol. We agree with that approach. It is sensible. These dedicated stores would only sell cannabis. They would not sell alcohol. We will not permit products to be visible. We are planning for approximately 150 stores by the end of 2020, with about 80 operational in the first year. These numbers are contingent on getting enough supply from federal licensed producers. The standalone retail stores would be supported by an LCBO-run online system that will also be ready for the July 2018 to provide province-wide access. As it does with alcohol, the LCBO would ensure this channel has all the necessary safeguards to make sure minors do not get access to the product. We will work with municipalities to locate these stores in regions across the province with primary goals of safety and supplanting the illicit market, including shutting down illegal dispensaries. Municipalities and law enforcement authorities are critical partners in this exercise. One of the questions that you may have is how much revenue this new system will bring to the province. Later this fall, federal and provincial governments will meet, and the federal approach will be determined around pricing and taxation will then be provided to us. We will then work with that and share Ontario's pricing model. In setting that structure, I can tell you that we will be guided by two important considerations. First, we want to set the price to discourage the reliance on the illegal market. We've heard from law enforcement that it can't be set too high. Second, we want to ensure it is not low that suggests we are encouraging consumption, because we are not. As public health experts will tell you, that would be a mistake. This is a price-sensitive product, and our priority will be to shrink the illicit market. So it will be a balance, and we will work hard once we have the federal model to get that balance right. We expect revenues to be modest initially and then grow over time. Frankly, this is uncharted territory, and we're going to have to monitor it and see how it develops. That said, we know that there will be some immediate claims against that revenue. At least some of that revenue will need to be reinvested into programs that address the impacts of federal legalization, such as public education, health and social programs, and law enforcement. Over the past year, we've worked with public health and safety experts and businesses from across the province. We've consulted with municipalities and Indigenous communities, and we've had asked the people of Ontario directly for their thoughts and ideas as well. And we've listened. And your views helped us to develop our safe and sensible approach. There are many aspects of the retail and distribution framework that are still to be decided. So we are committed to continuing to work with our partners as we continue to develop this system. But we are confident that we have taken the best approach. The LCBO model works. It's proven, and we feel strongly it's the right way to go. Most importantly, it would give the people of Ontario confidence that we will meet our objectives, ensuring safe and controlled sales, protecting youth, and shrinking the illicit market and shutting down the illegal dispensaries in our communities. A lot of work has been done. More will continue, and I thank you for your time. Merci. And at this point, we'd be happy to take your questions.
Why would, this is clearly a rushed announcement. There's more questions left than there are answers here. Why would anyone believe that this is anything but a smokescreen to cover up the criminal trials that are going on and are about to take place for your political office?
No pun intended, I'm sure. We have taken every necessary measure to do this in a timely manner. We are running out of time. We have to be prepared by July of next year. That requires us to get to the House, requires us to put legislation in place, requires us to work with the municipalities, with Indigenous communities, and we have to also establish the retail operation and establish that network, which also takes time.
Minister, how much tax revenue are you expecting? I mean, you must have some guesstimate of, you know how much you make in tobacco taxes, you know how much you make in booze taxes. There have been studies that say that this could be greater than those combined. What are your estimates?
Well, again, it's dependent upon the price point, it's dependent upon the tax systems that's going to be established. We have yet to work with the federal government in respect to that. I'm going to have a federal, territorial, provincial meeting in the coming months. We will then establish those points. Then there's also the issue of costs and the degree of which we're going to have to share some of that revenue to be reinvested into things that matter. There is going to be a cost involved with the establishment of these retail operations and the IT components for the online delivery. So a lot of things have to be established, and I've been looking at it. We can assess based upon what has happened in the United States in similar markets of similar size, and you can see exactly what type of revenue has been generated from there. But at the same time, we want to provide a price point that eliminates illegal activity and eliminates the illicit activity.
It's not going to be revenue neutral, right? This is going to be a bonanza of whether it's hundreds of millions or billions. You guys just haven't figured it out.
At the initial start, we're probably going to have some degree of caution as to the degree of net revenue may be provided, but there will certainly be revenue over time.
But on that, Minister, you have a significant investment to make up front. Is it possible that, at least in the short term, you're going to lose money on legal weed?
Well, I mean, there is going to be costs associated up front. I have been dealing with the federal government, with Bill Morneau specifically, who we recognize those costs are going to be made, and we'll have to have supports to ensure that we don't find ourselves in a position where we are losing. We need to have a cost recoverable. The federal government has assured us that they'll work with us to ensure that.
Are you comfortable with putting something on the books that says next 5 years we're taking a hit on legal marijuana because we have these investments?
We are taking every precaution necessary to ensure that there is no losses going forward, but we do want to take the precaution of ensuring that there's enough money to go into the programs that matter. We have to have an appropriate education program. We have to have a great degree of concern around the health issues. Keep in mind, there's another cost here, and that's the cost of the illegal activity that exists now and the health consequences that is now established. This is one way to combat against some of that as well.
When it comes to use, right now it'll be only private residences, but can you talk about, maybe next stages on licensing, how that could work moving forward, talk about bars and pubs and things like that?
So I think it's important to note that the federal legalization, as we speak right now, is focused on more traditional use, which is primarily smoking and vaping. They have not yet started the process of regulating the edible and oils around on our cannabis. So we are very much focused around those aspects that are being legalized federally. And as we outlined, what we are proposing to do is to align our approach around use or consumption to that for tobacco and alcohol, which means that the place that you can consume cannabis in a legal fashion is in your private residence. Similar to the rule that exists right now that you are not allowed to have a beer and walk on a sidewalk, but you can drink a beer in your backyard. That will be the case for cannabis. You will not be allowed to smoke or vape cannabis as you're walking on the sidewalk. Maybe you can do that in your private backyard. Are there opportunities in the future then to work on licensed establishments? Absolutely, and we will explore that, and of course we will work very closely with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, the AGCO, in a very similar fashion that is done for alcohol. Alcohol use is restricted, but it is allowed in licensed establishments, and AGCO then provides the license and then regulates that activity. And we will, moving forward, will explore that. But we're not announcing that today because we're not there yet in terms of in developing the rules and guidelines around venues other than your private residence.
How you're going to approach advertising? I imagine it would be different than LCBO alcohol advertising, or would it be similar? Looking at, the LCBO does like summer advertising for certain products. How will you approach that with this?
So I can tell you one thing around advertising, that the federal government in their legislation under Bill C-45 have outlined very strict conditions around advertising, and as I recall, they prohibit any advertising similar to tobacco. So those rules will apply, and of course, any control board mechanism that we will put in place would have to abide by those federal legislation.
Just on the first point on licensing of properties, you're separating the sale from liquor. Would it be that pubs, places where you can buy alcohol, would also be able to sell marijuana going forward, or they would be separate? You'd be looking at separate consumption.
So we haven't made those decisions yet. We're still in the consideration phase as to what that sort of regime would look like. And again, we have to do a fair bit of consultations with Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario and look at other experiences as well. So that is yet to be determined. And at this moment, we will not be permitting any venue outside than your private residence to be able to sell or allow consumption of cannabis.
Minister, why not work with the dispensaries that are already in existence here in Toronto? I mean, 150 by 2020, we had that many in Toronto already. Why not work with them if they've already got storefronts?
So we have about, I don't know, it's around 70 or so, or 80 thereabouts in Toronto now. Keep in mind there's a lot of, they come, they go, they come and go, so some of that number is inflated. We do want to combat the illicit activity, and we want to send a signal to the marketplace that distribution and retail is going to be a controlled model. It's going to be controlled by the government. So, and those are illegal activities. They have been, they will continue to be, and they will be shut down as we proceed forward. The storefront of a government-controlled store will be located in consultation with the municipalities, some of which will be strategic around some of those very locations that exist. And that'll probably do away with a number of stores all at once. That could be about 5 or 10 within a geographic of 3 or 4 blocks. So that would be removed.
To be fair, we've seen many of them shut down and pop up right back up again. So what's to say that that won't continue to happen?
Well, again, we're making it very clear that it's been illegal, it'll continue to be illegal, and consumers will have an alternate source of supply, retail, distribution, and they'll have online access as well. Now, some of them have online access already with medicinal marijuana, as we understand and we appreciate. This will be strictly recreational use.
Minister Hoskins, you don't look particularly comfortable with all this. Are you confident that the health concerns that have been expressed regarding legalization of marijuana are taken care of here? Like that the age is well below what has been recommended. Smoking anything in some cases is dangerous to the respiratory system.
Well, I am confident that we've struck that correct balance on both safe, which is my job, and sensible as well. So, in fact, when it comes to age, there is a strong weight of opinion in favor of age 19 in Ontario. So the Canadian Pediatric Society recommends age 19. CAMH, the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health, has recommended age 19. The Canadian Mental Health Association recommends age 19. So we've undertaken extensive consultations, in fact, beginning well before the federal legislation became law, consultations with stakeholders, to ensure that we were taking an appropriate public health precautionary approach that truly results in harm reduction, particularly that we meet our responsibility to children and youth and young adults to ensure that they are making and they have sufficient information to be able to make responsible choices, but particularly for those age groups where there is evidence and stakeholders feel quite appropriately concerned about use under age 19. We are and will be taking measures to ensure that that we have a vigorous public education campaign. We're working across ministries, the Ministry of Children and Youth Services, Ministry of Education, to ensure that we do take that safe and responsible approach.
Is this stuff dangerous?
Well, you know, with many substances, alcohol included, there are known risks associated with use. It's important that Ontarians understand what those risks are. Those risks are certainly aggravated with young individuals, children and youth particularly. But again, we believe that not only with the decisions that were articulated this morning, but also as we move forward with public information, training of healthcare professionals, programs that necessarily will be driven through the Ministry of Health to ensure that Ontarians of all ages are aware of the risks and are able to, over age 19, make the responsible decision based on that information.
Minister, are you okay, for you, Minister Hoskins, are you okay with people smoking on their balconies or their backyards, considering the smoke could waft into, you know, a bedroom window or something like that of a neighbor's home? Are you okay with that, or would you like it strictly inside the confines of the home?
Well, again, with regards to places of use, we looked at it through the framework that exists for alcohol. I think that was articulated by Yasser a few moments ago, but also with regards to our tobacco legislation that's in place. I think importantly, it's worth mentioning that every U.S. jurisdiction that has legalized recreational cannabis follows the same approach that we're taking, restricting it to private residences.
But again, that isn't quite clear, because a backyard, a balcony is part of a private residence. So should it be indoors? Should it be outdoors, so long as you're on your own property?
Yeah, I mean it's a private residence. So similar to if you can smoke or a cigarette or drink a beer or a glass of wine in your backyard or balcony, you will be able to consume cannabis as well. We're aligning our policy to alcohol and tobacco because we feel that is a sensible thing to do. We want to make sure that the kind of safeguards that we have in place around tobacco use or around alcohol, around parks and our beaches and sidewalks or public places or workplaces remain intact when it comes to recreational use of cannabis as well. So we're extending the same protection to Ontarians, children, youth, or adults as it relates to the new policies around cannabis.
If you're sitting in the car with a kid, can you smoke pot in your residence inside with a kid, with children present?
Well, again, I mean the rule. Well, the rule that we have in place in tobacco and alcohol is that you are allowed to smoke with a child at home, and the same rule will extend in case of cannabis.
How many storefronts will be open next summer, like say by July 1st, 2018?
So we're going to be aiming for 40 stores right at the outset, and evolve over to 80 by the end of the year and 150 by 2020. We will have an assessment of the degree of demand that will occur over that period of time. We will have online availability to every resident in Ontario at the same time.
What will be that upfront cost?
Well, we are assessing those costs as we proceed forward based on the work that's being done by LCBO. And today, I'll be writing a letter to LCBO to commence the operations, to look at a business plan, to hire a real estate agent to take the necessary steps to provide for those site locations, working alongside municipalities, restricting the degree of which some of those locations will be located based on keeping away from schools, ensuring they're not located anywhere near an LCBO because these are autonomous, separate outlets. Also noting that there'll be behind-the-counter activity similar to what it was back in the early days of LCBO and beer store activity. And also ensuring that they're located in areas where certain stores exist that are illegal to eliminate and combat and stop the illegal activity of dispensaries now.
Going back on the model when it comes to selling, what happens to rural areas that don't have a crown corporation like the LCBO? There are some rural areas that sell their own liquor. Is that going to be the case? Are small stores going to have access to this as well? How does it work in rural areas?
There is going to be regional considerations as well as we proceed forward. We are working with every municipality as we proceed. We're also looking and working with Indigenous communities. We had a long discussion with them already this morning. I already met with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario yesterday. I'm having a conversation with all mayors today, this afternoon, on some of these matters also. And of course, online is available to everyone. Sorry, I can't hear. Go ahead.
How concerned are you that there will not be enough legal supply by July 1st of next year to meet the demand that's going to exist, in particular for the online?
There's about 58 producers that are licensed now, I understand, and the federal government will be required to provide the supply. We can only purchase supply from a licensed producer in Canada. And it'll be incumbent upon them to have the efficient supply, the necessary supply at that time. So that is why we're commencing with 40 stores initially and ramping up quickly thereafter, depending upon the degree of supply that's made available.
One more.
What do you anticipate the demand will actually be? Can you put a figure on what you expect the amount of product to sell through these outlets?
We understand that there is demand, obviously, and as Yasser has mentioned, it's high in Ontario and Canada for that matter. We've seen a demand increase in other parts of the United States rather quickly, so we're cognizant of that and we're taking those precautions.
You can't put a figure on the demand? I mean, if you're concerned about that there's not going to be enough supply, I just don't quite understand why you can't tell us what you actually think the amount of product that's going to be demanded is going to be.
Yeah, our primary concern is to attack the illicit activity, to ensure that we have a proper price point to meet and beat that activity, and ensure we have a sufficient distribution and supply to combat that activity. And if that, we need to work closely with the federal government to ensure that they have the appropriate supply necessary. I have the same concerns, and that's why we're having those discussions as well.
Attorney General, there's court backlogs in Ontario are a big problem. Are you going to say to prosecutors, let the marijuana cases go and it's going to be legal on July 1st anyway? Or are you going to continue to prosecute even though we have these massive delays?
So as the law stands right now, cannabis, as you know, is an illegal substance under the Federal Controlled Substances Act. So when charges are laid by the police, they are prosecuted by the federal crown. They're not prosecuted by the provincial crown because that illegality exists as a result of federal piece of legislation. So it's not my place to tell any crown. I don't think the federal justice minister will tell a crown in her jurisdiction either whether to prosecute the matter or not because of the independence in our criminal justice system.
Aren't you hoping that this will at least help alleviate? I mean, these small-time drug crimes they do waste a lot of time in court, and that does have an impact on Ontario's court system.
Absolutely. I mean, the legalization would have a somewhat impact on the court resources where these matters are tried. Even on the youth side, as has been articulated to you in the briefing, we are decriminalizing youth possession. We're looking at the provincial offenses, a ticketing method. However, our focus is going to be more on diversion and focusing on public health around prevention and harm reduction. So yes, it would have a positive impact. But do not forget also the road safety aspect of it and around impaired use. We have seen in other jurisdictions in the United States where they've legalized cannabis use that you tend to see initially at least an increase in impaired driving as a result of drugs. So Minister Del Duca will speak at a future date around the steps we will be taking to ensure that our roads remains the safest in North America.
Do you see the stores will be kind of small to start off, or like large superstores, and are you going to sell it like a pack of cigarettes, or you can get it like a keg, a box? How are you going to actually sell marijuana?
Yeah, so as it's envisioned now, it would be behind-the-counter activity. You'll have to go to a salesperson who would then obtain the appropriate product as requested. We will have more to say as we proceed forward in respect to how that'll look. Advertising is restricted, but the degree of stores, likely it will be smaller storefront operations. It will be independent wholesale activity and warehousing activity from the LCBO specifically, as well as the stores, but it will be used and operated under the LCBO model. And within the LCBO umbrella, right?
On that, in order to combat the illicit market, you're going to have to meet the demand that the illicit market has created. So what about edibles? What about the products that the various strains and the knowledge behind the counter that many of those people who are users themselves have?
Yeah, so one of the cost implications is very much around the staffing and the training and the ability for those to handle the product, to be aware of what's available. There's going to be a list of SKUs and accessories as well as product to be sold. Edibles will not be one of them, mind you. But in terms of beating the illicit activity, we need to ensure that we're available. So the province of Ontario will do its part. We'll be ready to have retail, to have distribution, to have online, to provide the demand. It's up to the federal government to ensure that the supply exists to meet that demand. We'll be restricted based upon that relationship. And earlier on, and this is, I mean, if I look at what we're doing today, within the short period of time that we have, remember, bootleggers and speakeasies back in the day took a while to comply to come to where we are today. We're taking those steps. We've taken a lot of lessons from the work that the LCBO has made over the last 90 years. Taking advantage of that strength, that efficiency, and that process, we're confident that we're able to provide what's necessary for around safety and eliminating the illicit activity.
Crackdown on the illegal market begins today?
Well, cracking down the illegal market has always been the case, but we'll ensure we're sending a strong signal out there that is not going to be tolerated going forward.
Thanks, everyone. We got it right there.
Will more closely resemble the liquor stores from the 1950s and 40s, 50s, and 60s than today's liquor stores.
The stores will be coming out in short order, and we'll have more to say in terms of how they'll look. But we do want to make certain that we combat the illegal activity. That's our primary issue.